to loss or damage or injury. So as far as insurance is concerned, we very popularly talk of loss or damage and injury. We said yesterday that the non-life insurance by and large relates to people, profits, that is persons, profit, property and liability, the legal liability. Why should a risk situation get created? Number of reasons. One may be the people who are dealing with certain situations are not aware that there is a risk. Even if they are aware, they may not have the capability to deal with that. Equally, there may not be any management motivation for them to look at things which are little bit away from their day-to-day pure functions. Or they may be very casual in approach, they may be indifferent to deal with any problems. Vast majority of risk situations involve one or more of these factors. To be on the lighter side, let us have a look at a few examples in practice. If somebody has to look at risks, what you normally see or what is obvious is just a tip of the iceberg. What really lies underneath is a very, very high degree and very big risk. In short, the risks which are clearly visible and quantifiable are really easier to manage. The ones which are below the surface, which are not easily seeable, which have to be searched and found out, obviously there will be some little more searching solutions to be found for them. We saw this yesterday that different people will classify risk in different fashions. And just to have a repeat of what we did yesterday, we classify as personal, property or liability risk. The personal thing relates to loss to person, potential loss to persons, the potential loss to property and potential legal liability. Somebody else may classify it as physical, social or market risk. Physical relates to acts of God and those type of perils, natural perils. Social relates to riot, strike, civil commotion, burglary, theft. Market risk will relate to the price reduction or the purchase and sale constants get involved. Pure and speculative risks. In pure risk, there is only chance of loss. There is no chance of gain at all. A fire. Yesterday somebody had asked a question about what is a pure risk. Can you give an example? If a property is on fire, the property can get only damage. If you talk of speculative risk, like say investments in share market or trading in the share market, there are both chances of gain and loss. Static risks and dynamic risks. Static ones relate to the irregular acts of forces of nature or natural calamities or mistakes or misdeeds of human beings, persons. They may relate to frauds, dishonesty, whereas dynamic risks get associated with change in human wants and technological improvements. So like we talked of change in fashion or change in taste and people move to a new product. The computers what we use today and what we used 10 years back, these are technological innovations. Coming to fundamental and particular risks. Fundamental risks relate to groups. They by and large relate to political and economical changes. whereas particular risks are those which affect individuals. Commercial and insurable risks. Commercial are normally associated with speculative or dynamic risk. They are usually uninsurable. The others, insurable risks, which are amenable to static and pure risks. I can make a point here that these are the topics, especially for the people who are new to insurance subjects. That when you are talking to somebody or somebody is talking to you, there may be a feeling that yes, these subjects are easy. Yes, they are easy to understand, but they are not that easy to remember. That's why it is extremely important that you have to regularly read the books. As far as the licentiate exams are concerned, definitely these 3 or 4 prescribed books, 3 books, IC 01, 02, 11 and 14, Principles, Practice and Regulations. These are the ones which will be the Bible for these exams. I mentioned yesterday, there was a question again yesterday, what will be the type of questions in the exams. There will be multiple choice questions and you have to select the correct one. Yet another way of classifying risk, somebody says financial risk, operational risk, regulatory risk. See, all these risk perceptions vary from person to person. What is the regulatory risk? Today, suppose you are in a business and you have made your entire planning, financial planning, projections on the basis of current laws, current regulations. Tomorrow, if the regulator or the concerned authority suddenly makes changes in the rules, regulations, which will affect your style or your forecast, your style of functioning, and you will find that you may come across a situation where you are not able to achieve what you targeted. Those are regulatory risks. Somewhere you will feel this H, S and E on the right side of this slide. Health, safety, environment. Variety of ways people can express these risks. Do this depends on the stars? What we normally see, the horoscopes and Kundali, what we call in Hindu thing. What is that? What are we doing by seeing horoscopes? It is again a perception. Somebody feels that certain stars are not favorable, are favorable, and what you are trying to seek with an advice from an astrologer is a comfort level, psychological comfort. But when we talk of business and assets and those related risks, do we really depend on that? I have just drafted a sample horoscope. I don't call it horoscope because risk result into loss, damage, injury. I am calling this as horoscope. We talked of persons, property, profits leading to losses and creating liabilities. All the triangles on the 4 sides of the square, you will see that they are the types of losses or damages that come. If you talk of property, the property may be totally destroyed, it may be partial loss, or in insurance parlance we call it constructive total loss, where the cost of repairs may be higher than the insured value. Liabilities can come out of tort, that is wrongdoing. They may come out of some legislation, statutes, or it can come out of certain contracts where somebody takes over a liability. Profits, consequential loss. There was a question yesterday as to what is the consequential loss. A loss consequent to the damaged property or the actual action of a peril. They will relate to interruption of business. If somebody is hiring out his premises, loss of hire, loss of rent, or loss of market, your product doesn't have a market. And these are again external influencing factors are like frailty, that is moral hazard what was discussed earlier, weakness of character, that is moral hazard, dishonesty of customers, environmental factors, catastrophic events like earthquakes, floods, and political and socio-economic factors. This is just a symbolic chart to show that yes, let us look at these things in a holistic way. Risk radar. Like a radar for the aeroplanes or the ships, looks at all directions for any unfamiliar or foreign objects which may disturb the smooth passage of aircrafts or the ships. Let us look at the corporate objectives at the center. What can affect the corporate objectives from being achieved? Financial risks, strategic risks, hazard risks, and operational risks. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is a symbolic chart to tell you that look at all aspects of whatever the activity is being done. There may be legal aspects, there may be financial aspects, there may be aspects related to supply chain, materials, information systems, quality controls. Ultimately, whatever way you classify, you will find that the basic classification is one, that you have certain risk from within because of your own structure, your infrastructure, your own facilities. These are the risks from within, risk from outsiders, and risks you pose to the outsiders. This is again a chart in that fashion. The arrows going out tell you that these are the risks which are you pose to the outsiders. The arrows coming in show you these are the threats, risks, dangers you are exposed from outside. One place you will find that for the same item the arrow is going in and coming out. That is by environmental damage, pollution, waste disposal, a variety of things. And what lies in the oval or this longer circular chart are the internal risks for a same manufacturing premises, where machinery breakdown, fire, electrical disturbances, negligence of employees, and this type of things can cause an internal threats. Again, a reminder of yesterday's chart. Starting point is there a risk? If yes, measure it. After measurement, look at the aspect of can it be avoided or eliminated. After doing that, if it cannot be eliminated, if it cannot be avoided, can it be reduced? When you say reduced, means still something remains back. Is that residual thing significant, or it is within your tolerable limits, acceptable limits? If it is not within the acceptable limits, if it is significant, can you retain it? That means, can your balance sheet take care of any occurrence of such risk? If it cannot, you have to take a decision of transferring this risk to somebody else. One of the entities in this somebody else is the insurance. And as we saw yesterday, insurance plays a very major, important role in the whole economy of any country. What are the methods in managing risks? First step is analyze, that is identify and assess. Assess means measure. What can be the monetary impact? Assessing, evaluating, measuring, these are three different terminologies used in this area. After this, we come to the area where we come to the solution or finding out a solution, whether it can be prevented, it can be avoided, Can it be reduced? Can it be retained? Or can it be transferred? Same chart what you saw in the earlier slide in a different smaller format. Again, what is the risk perception? Something I may feel is risky. One of you may feel that this is not risky. So the risk perception will depend on the individuals, depend on the type of activity undertaken, depending on the situation in which this activity is undertaken, and depend on the environment or the surrounding within which this activity is performed. Individuals play an extremely important role in all this. Moment you talk of individuals, automatically there are different attitudes which come up, because all people, all persons, their mindset, their attitudes are not the same. This is just a theoretical definition. Somebody says risk attitude is defined as the ways in which a person behaves in an uncertain situation and varies from person to person because of their personalities, their economic status, and the potential gain or loss which can be achieved by them from this particular risk. The categories of such attitudes can be put into risk neutral, risk preferer, or risk averter. What are these three things? Let us look at first risk neutral. So let us take of one individual. He is very keen on betting and he wants to bet on a, say, India-Pakistan match, say cricket match. Now his prime concern is, let India lose or Pakistan lose, he should not lose. So what he does is, he puts a same bet on both the teams, say 100 rupees. He puts 100 rupees on the Indian team's winning, 100 rupees on the Pakistani team winning. So any one of them lose, he does not lose. Second category is the risk preferer. He says, I will take the risk, then only I will make profit. Unless I take a risk, I won't succeed. Third category is the risk averter. He says, I don't want to deal with this risk at all. You insurance company charge me whatever premium you want, but I don't want to face any of these risks. These are standard, normal attitudes you will come across among ourselves. Again, related to our basic human attitudes. We come across three types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who simply wonder what happened, and this is a vast majority. In risk preferer, I would say they will fit in those who make things happen. Oh, what a interesting picture. These ladies standing on the railway track and chit-chatting. We don't know what. But what is so important? Aren't they aware of this risk of a train coming, or they are meeting with an accident? So lack of awareness. Some of them may be aware, they don't care. Carelessness. Or it may so happen that they may be aware of risk of standing on the railway track. They may be careful in a normal course, but in their talk there may be some topic which comes and they feel it is an extremely important topic, and they suddenly forget their awareness and care. So what happens is, at that particular moment of time, their priorities get misplaced. Now apply this analogy to any activity which perform either as an individual or as a manufacturing organization or as a commercial organization. You will find that whole thing fits into such attitudes. Moment you said, I have a particular perception, your solution to solve that risk or solve that particular difficulty will depend on this risk perception. Look at this gentleman. This was when, the mobile phones came first time in our cities. And people were very much afraid that the mobiles will get stolen. His lock is as big as the mobile phone instrument itself. Do you realize that the big thing what he is missing is if he misplaces the key or if he receives an emergency call, an urgent call, he has to first search for the key, open the lock, keep the lock in proper place, then take out the phone. See another example. Just any roadside vendor standing on a corner. The biggest risk to his business he feels is that all passers-by keep on asking him address of particular in the neighborhood. And he gets so disturbed by these addresses being asked to him that he has put a board there on his cart that address puchne ke 5 rupaye. That for making an inquiry with me, I will charge you 5 rupees. So what is his perception and what is the solution he found? Look at the another one. This solution, the person has to go and visit a place of worship. He has to remove his footwear. Equally, he has to take care of his bicycle. He has tried to put a lock of the bicycle lock and encircle within that chappals what he has taken out. So what solution is the best solution in a particular situation will be dominated by that situation. In risk solving, we always say be innovative. Look at these 3 pictures. Are they innovative? Theoretically speaking, yes. But are they doing it safely? Or are they exposing themselves to more risks? This is something will set a tone of how you look at things. All of us remember, especially those who are in Mumbai, those big floods in Mumbai. We say take some measures. Now these measures have to be practical. Can each one of us, with the fear that there may be a flood in our city or our town, can purchase and keep a boat handy in our house? Personally, I don't feel it is practical. So how do you treat the risk? We talked of avoiding or preventing, reduction, retention, transfer. It is easy to say avoid and prevent, but complete avoidance and prevention is not all the time possible. If somebody says avoid this risk, will you avoid doing that activity which can produce profits for you? Reduce the risk. I mean, what are you trying to do? You are trying to reduce the impact of the risk occurring. So when do you take the measures? Such measures of reducing the risk have to be definitely before accident. You will always find that there are always measures pre-event, during event and post-event. What we are talking here of reducing the risk itself relates to pre-event. Retention. That means you are taking a decision, calculated decision, not to transfer this risk to insurance or anybody else. This is a very, very important decision in the whole game. Who is this anybody else? I have been mentioning it yesterday and even now. Insurance is one person, where you pay small amount of premium and you get a promise for protecting you financially, subject to those terms conditions of that policy. Let us take example of all of us have seen that when we walk on the road, some building or the other is under construction. And on this construction site, We see a large number of people, gents and ladies, doing all manual labor. They are carrying bricks, sand, cement and those type of materials. It is purely physical work, does not require any training, any knowledge, any skill. And mind you, you will find that out of 50 people on the site, 45 people are of this nature. If the contractor has to employ all these 45 people on his role, the risk he faces on these people are the personal issues. Somebody among them may meet with an accident, somebody may do some mistake. Now, plus he has to maintain their attendance, maintain all the government regulatory things about their insurance, their provident fund, their gratuity, whatnot. He has to comply with all the rules. Now to do this becomes a big headache for him. So what he does is, instead of himself employing all these 45 people, he hires these people from a labor contractor. That means a contractor who supplies labor. So he is saved of all these human relationship or personal department type of issues for these 45 people. And he can concentrate more effectively on the actual work to be done. Now retention, I said, important decision. What are the factors that will be influencing such a decision? How frequently this type of loss or risk can occur? That is probability of occurrence. What can be the potential impact on the assets? To what extent they can get damaged? To what extent the people can get injuries or damage? What can be the effect on the environment, the neighborhood? All these things will go into taking this decision. See, more importantly, when you say that you are taking a decision to retain a risk, means you are deliberately deciding to meet with or bear all the financial consequences of that risk occurring or taking place. When is it feasible to retain? When there is low probability of occurrence? Where the insurance premium is so costly that it is higher than the impact of such a risk. It does not affect your balance sheet or your profits. And you are in a comfortable position financially to create some funds and keep them as reserves. So these are reserves possibilities. In practice, it is very difficult to find all these combinations together. This is another chart which you may not find in the book, but I thought it proper to just to make your concepts clear. If somebody plots a graph of probability of loss against the actual amount of loss in terms of rupees, the graph will be the white line what I have shown here in this graph. The shape of the graph will be something like this. And you will find that in the first zone, that is the leftmost blue zone, there are large number of losses, and these are large number of small losses. At the end of the year or at the end of a particular period, they may accumulate to a very big amount. What is insurance? Insurance will primarily take care of all accidental damages. All these type of small damages or small accidents which regularly take place may be inherent to the activity itself, to the manufacturing activity or the business activity. So insurers will not be in a comfortable position to accept this risk for insurance. And then it becomes a must for somebody to retain this risk. So this is a must retain zone. It may happen that some insurance company may be willing to accept this risk, but then they will have their own pricing, their own cost, and the clients may find that the cost is excessive or prohibitive. Then come to the next zone, that is a yellow band here. Here your earnings and working capital can take care of these losses. So there is a definite decision as to, yes, I can retain these risks. Next comes the pink zone, where earnings and equity capital cannot sustain losses in this region. So you must transfer this to somebody. Insurance is a predominant player in this area. Then on the most right side, the black zone, that is the residual risk. Here we are talking of very, very large losses which may not occur very often. And the management has to take a calculated decision whether to accept these losses on their shoulder. There may be something, a very severe size of earthquake which may occur once in 1,000 years. Do you do your everyday business on the basis of your 1,000 years risk perceptions? Certainly no. But then these are the decisions of the local managements. What are the advantages of retaining? 100% retention, most desirable, many times not advisable. They may reduce your insurance premiums. If you are retaining your risk, what happens in insurance? Insurance company charges you premium depending on their experience on claims being produced by the whole lot of people who come in within the pool of their members of the pool administered by the insurance company. All of them pay premiums. So each individual gets affected by the claims experience of others. There are lesser chances of disputes on claims. And moment you say that I will retain the risk, you are more alert to make sure that this type of risk do not occur. You will take all precautionary measures, all measures within your facility to see that things run smoothly. The disadvantage is, in spite of best efforts, there will be catastrophic events like earthquakes, floods, or any other natural perils. That adverse impact will be beyond your day-to-day financial capacities. Plus, the accumulation or the total of small losses at the end of a period may be a big amount. And when you say you are willing to retain things, you are keeping reserves, and those reserves, by keeping those reserves, you are blocking the working capital which may otherwise be available from this fund. Okay, now this we have talked so far of the risk a insured or a facility owner or asset owner or a individual faces. Do the insurers also face risk? Yes, definitely. Each business, each activity faces risk. Again, depending on the activity, depending on the style of functioning, the risk change, differ. Let us look at now how the insurers manage their risks. When an insurance company works as a trustee or a manager of a pool for a large number of people, knowing well that out of this a very few will meet with losses, and from this fund you will make good those losses. So his attitude all along, the insurer's attitudes towards the insurers has to be always fair and equitable. There should be no discrimination between the risk and people of this similar type, similar level. Insurance premium is again based on expectation of loss, based on statistical principles. There is the law of large numbers. See, we always say that if you have a wider sample, your assumptions, your projections, forecasts may be more realistic. Same law applies here. Larger the number of risks in a pool, more realistic will be the assumptions that an insurance company makes in deciding the premium, deciding the other terms and conditions of coverage. Larger the business spread, better is the experience. If you have a, say, 100 number of people in a group, and you have 1,000 number of people in a group, definitely the larger number 1,000 will be more beneficial. It will produce less losses. Again, the premium depends on past experience and statistical data. See, the past experience of the concerned client himself or the clients having similar facilities, similar nature clients may not be the same person. The same person, same facilities experience plus the experience of similar people in the group where no statistical data is available from experience of people who have been handling similar type of groups. This statistical data or past experience gives a trend to the insurance company based on which they can vary the premiums being charged by them. And it is always the case that nobody can always say that what I am charging is the correct premium. Underline the word the correct. What insurance companies say that what we charge is an adequate premium. So it has to be subject to review over a particular period of time. So periodic review depending on experience, depending on changes in the risk situation is extremely important and will go into the insurance premium. Now let us look at what are the other factors which will decide how much premium. If the revenue comes from the insurance premiums for an insurance company, what else? He also gets income from the investments made by way of interest and dividends. How does the expenses come in? This revenue received goes for payment of claims to the people affected, salaries of the staff, commissions to the agent who bring business, rent of the premises from which you run the business, and other expenses of conducting the business. You will always find, yesterday we talked of pure premium, that premium related to amount of claim, that is the pure premium. It has to be loaded for this type of expenses, the salaries, commissions, expenses. And it will always be the case that the insurance companies keep some margin for expected large losses which may come in future. So that provision goes into this, etc. So as a trustee of the fund collected by way of premiums from different insurers, the prime duty of the insurer is to protect the interests of the policyholders or the insurers. You must have heard that there is a separate regulation from IRDA for protection of policyholders' interest. Just in the passing, I may mention to you that it will be extremely useful to you if you look at the IRDA website from time to time and try to take out whatever relevant to you. Now, important process in this whole game of effectively conducting the insurance business is underwriting. Underwriting, perhaps you have heard, relates to analyzing the risk, what is put before you for insurance, if you are an insurance company. And based on your analysis, you are the underwriter, you decide whether you want to accept this risk on your books or you want to decline or reject. Obviously, when you want to accept, what will be the premium? What will be the terms of the policy or the conditions of the policy? That is, what is the coverage you want to offer. So, rates, terms and conditions together becomes the package. There is a major role of an underwriter. Underwriting and claim settlement, these are two extremely important decisions in an insurance company. Your efficiency, performance is judged by your promptness and fair and equitability in settling claims. So certainly the insurers come across claims which may be fraudulent in the sense there may be some false claim made on them. There may be some declarations, information not fully given to them. The insurance companies pay claims as they occur. There is no certainty about when and how much will come for them to pay. Their entire business planning projections are done on the basis of estimates, assumptions, and if there is a great variation between what they assumed or what they estimated and what actually surfaced in the market, there will be difficulties for them. Plus, there may be catastrophic events like, say, earthquake or, say, the flood in Mumbai or any place. Suppose if the same level of earthquake or same strength of earthquake or earthquake of the same strength, flood of the same intensity occurs next year or, say, within 2 years, will it affect the same houses or same places it affected earlier? Not necessarily. So, what will be the monetary impact of such catastrophic events? Exactly uncertain. Plus, there may be aggregation or accumulation of different types of losses, different types of risks. So, best thing for them, the insurance companies, is that like the insured share their risk with other members of the pool through the insurance company as the administrator, they share their risk with reinsurers in the market. And reinsurance plays an important role, extremely important role in the whole game of conducting the insurance business. Let us take for example, an insurance company does not pass on 100% of the risk they assume from the insured. They retain something for their account. Here is the example. The insured gives 100% of his risk to the insurer. The insurer receives a policy. He says, I will keep 60% with me, and for balance 40%, he reinsures in the open market. Look at it this way. The insurer, what is the main attraction for the insured or the main purpose for which the insured takes insurance? That he should be protected in the event of a claim. If it is the first limb of this chart, the insurance company pays claims to the insured. In the second case, where the insurance company arranges reinsurance, part of the risk is shared by the insurer with the reinsurer. So that part of the claim which relates to the insurer is paid by him to the insurance company, and insurance company pays 100% of its loss to the insured. So as far as the insured is concerned, he deals only with the insurer. Reinsurance is the insurance company's internal arrangement. So what is reinsurance? Reinsurance in its simplest form is insurance of insurance. This is how it is defined in the German commercial law. This is simple to remember. Remember only one thing, that no insurance company passes on 100% of the risk written by him to the reinsurance company. He shares part of the risk with the reinsurance company. What happens with this? The risk gets spread through insurance and reinsurance. Look at it this way. The red entity shown in this slide is the insurance company, and the white ones below are, say, the insureds X, Y, Z. All of them come and insured with the insurance company. And part of the risks of this X, Y, Z accepted by this insurance company, they pass on to reinsurers in the foreign market, say reinsurer A, reinsurer B, or reinsurer C. It will never be only one reinsurer. It will be a group of reinsurers or a number of reinsurers. There are different types and styles of reinsurance. One is a treaty, other is facultative. Treaty is done on an automatic basis, which takes care of, by and large, suitable for large number of small risks on the profile of the book of risk written by insurance company. Facultative is very large risks which are done with the reinsurance company on an individual basis. See, for your purpose of the licensure examination, we don't need to go into the very many finer details of what exactly are these arrangements, how they do. It becomes a fellowship examination paper. At the moment, just remember that treaty and facultative are the major forms. Within that, proportional and non-proportional or excess of loss, these are the two different methods of conducting reinsurance business. Facultative in treaty, proportional, that is surplus and quota share treaty. Non-proportional are also called as excess of loss. They are per risk XL, catastrophic XL, stop loss XL, aggregate XL, umbrella XL, and a variety of names will be prevailing. What you remember today is facultative, treaty. They are done in the style proportional and non-proportional. So, why did we talk again of risk management today? As for the sake of emphasis, and also again bringing it to your notice that risk management is also being done by insurance companies to protect their own balance sheets. So, arranging reinsurance is a logical outcome of the insurer's own risk management strategy. It is an international business without which direct operations of an insurance company would collapse. Today, if you look in the world, all insurance companies reinsure. Depending on the financial strength and size of the insurance company, how much and how they reinsure will be different. It is an international business without which no new line of business can be introduced. I can give you an example here of the Indian industrial all risk policy. See, in India we had fire policy separate, machinery breakdown policy separate, theft and burglary policy separate, and a separate consequential loss or business interruption policy. Now, there were demands from insurers that instead of making us deal with so many different documents, why not we have a single policy which covers all our interests? So, industrial all risk policy was introduced in India, which covered the perils of fire and other allied perils, which you must have learned when somebody talked to you on fire. It covered the risk of machinery breakdown. It covered the risk of theft and burglary, and also fire, loss of profits or business interruption following fire. And the machinery loss of profit, that is loss of profits or business interruption following breakdown of machinery, was at the option of the insured to select. Now in the insurance company, they have a separate reinsurance arrangement for fire portfolio, for machinery breakdown portfolio, for theft and burglary portfolio. When you combine all these things, which reinsurance arrangement will take care of the new policy? Also, it may happen that there may be some types of losses where there may be, say, difficulties in interpretation as to whether this loss relates to fire or to breakdown or something else. In that situation, the reinsurance support may not be proper. To avoid this, it is always better that when you introduce a new product in the insurance business, it is properly supported by an independent reinsurance arrangement. What does reinsurance do? See, it is like a shock absorber on a car. The shock absorber on a car does not improve the quality of the road. It does not fill all the potholes on a road. But with that shock absorber, your ride becomes little more comfortable. It smoothens the ride. Same thing happens with reinsurance. Let us take one example here. If on the direct insurance policy, say the premium is 100 rupees. It's just a offhand, broad, very crude example to reach you with a concept. Out of this 100 rupees or 100 rupees 100% premium, the insurance company reinsures 90%. So the premium given to the reinsurers is 90 rupees out of 100. Premium retained by the insurance company is 10 rupees. So they agreed to share the premium and the losses in this ratio of 10 to 90. Now, the expenses which the direct insurance company have to make or incur for procurement of business, that is commission to agents, other expenses, the reinsurer does not have those expenses. So what he does is, out of the 90 rupees taken by him, he gives, say, 10% commission. 10 is not a fixed amount. I am giving you as an example. So he gives 9 rupees out of 90 rupees as a commission to the insurance company. So with this, what happens? The premium now retained by the insurance company is 10 plus 9, 19 rupees, whereas the premium kept by the reinsurance company is 81 rupees. But they will share the losses, claims, in the ratio of 10:90. So if there is a loss of 100 rupees, the Indian insurance company or the insurance company pays 10 rupees, reinsurance company pays 90 rupees. Now see how the reinsurance arrangement has helped the insurance company, that it pays 10 rupees out of the 19 rupees kept by him. Now, you will ask, why should the reinsurance company be in business for giving 90 rupees loss by taking 81 rupees? He doesn't face loss on each and every policy written by him. He writes business in a variety or different types of insurance companies, so he gets a spread. All policies do not produce loss at the same time. So he faces a loss on some policies, he faces profits on some policies. He evens out, that is a spread. And that is how the business results of the insurance company get improved. So what are the functions of the reinsurance? It increases the capacity of the insurance company. It renders financial stability. It helps in stabilizing claims ratio. It helps in dealing with accumulations. What is accumulation? Let us take two examples. Say fire policy is extended to cover earthquake. If one company writes only fire insurance business together with earthquake cover, one policy sum insured is 10,000 rupees, other is 1 lakh, 10 lakhs, variety of things. All of this liability assumed by this insurance company on the risk of fire and earthquake, the sum total, cumulative total of all these sums insured becomes the accumulation in the branch of fire. Now let us look at the things like earthquake again. Earthquake does not affect only fire policies. It is also covered in the comprehensive motor insurance policies. It is also covered under the all risk policies in the engineering department, that is CAR, EAR, contractors plant machinery, those type of policies. Suppose there is an earthquake and all these types of policies issued by insurance companies in different departments or different branches of insurance are affected. The sum total or cumulative total of all these policies affected becomes accumulation in branches. Reinsurance gives you spread of risk. Again, that law of large numbers. It helps you in protecting solvency margins. These are the ratios prescribed against assets and liabilities. IRDA prescribes the certain ratios. What should be the solvency margins for life companies, direct insurance, the general insurance companies. See, for all these things, it is always better that you have a look at the IRDA website, try to understand what the things are. Looking at all these things will, help you in getting a better perception, better perspective, understanding of the subjects. And with this, the reinsurance helps in improving profitability of the insurance company. We always say in reinsurance you get a global spread. We have seen that if a risk is insured with, say, different companies in the same market, domestic market, you get a local spread. Let us take an example here. On top you see a large number of buildings together, say dwellings. All these residential houses in a particular location, they are insured in the domestic market or local insurance companies, ABCD. ABCD, these four insurance companies may have their different financial capacities. They in turn reinsure part of the risk written by them, say with 6 reinsurance companies in UK, 2 in Africa, 1 in Europe and 2 in Asia. Again, the first level reinsurance companies, they also further reinsure, they do reinsurance of reinsurance. They partly further reinsure what they have accepted as reinsurance. That is called retrocession. Retrocession. This retrocession, say they do in 1 in Bermuda, 1 in Middle East, 1 in Europe. So what has happened? The basic risks of these dwelling houses in one location, say Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh, anything, or whole of India, is insured by insurance companies ABCD. So Indian companies participating. Their reinsuring makes companies in UK, Africa, Europe and Asia also participate. And their retrocession makes Bermuda, Middle East and European companies again to participate. So the local risk within the Indian market get a global spread, and the catastrophic losses can be recovered from all over the world.